Hi everyone, welcome to the month ahead show for April. And of course, we are in extraordinary times and extraordinary circumstances. Hopefully you're hunkered down at home in your self-isolation and you keeping your social distance, because there's not that much we can do about a viral pandemic, but there is something we can do, and that's what it is. So important thing is that you're staying at home, that you're doing your best under the circumstances to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. One of the questions that of course immediately arises, and what we want to focus on for a while this month, is what does astrology say about this pandemic? Was it predicted? Was it predictable? And if so, and even if not, what can we expect of it? What is going to be the outcome of this great challenge that we face? So on today's show, I'm going to concentrate on that and show you how astrology describes what we're going through and what was predicted about it. And then when we get to looking at what to expect from that, we'll also look at, of course, your particular month ahead. And since we're all pretty much in a reduced activity mode, rather than talk about all the usual things we need to go out and do and will go out and do, I'll concentrate instead for each of the 12 signs on how to get the most out of the time that you have to spend alone. How to find, how can you grow? What do you need to focus on? How can you best manage the process of this difficult time we face ahead? So stay tuned after the discussion of the virus for what you can do for yourself to best survive this difficult time in the weeks and months ahead. So first, to address the question, did astrologers predict this, and what did they say? As far as I know, no astrologer predicted a pandemic. Most astrologers, including myself, probably could never go there. One of the challenges we face with astrology is that, especially when dealing with astrology on the large scale of the world or a country, we see cycles which represent symbolic ideas in our culture and archetypal ideas in our culture, and we try and interpret those. In personal charts, we've got a lot of context for people's personal lives, and we've got ways in astrology to find out exactly what the context is. But those tools don't really exist pretty much when you're looking at the world as a whole, and there is no specific focus because, of course, cultures are different and countries are different, and there isn't one way to sum up the human experience like that. So I don't know of any astrologer that actually predicted a pandemic. But what many astrologers have been speaking about, including myself, for a number of years, is that 2020 is going to be one of the most difficult years we ever face. Most astrologers have thought that 2020 would be the year that World War III begins. And of course, we never really quite put it into those words. I think I might have said that once or twice during some monthly predictions last year, but really just spoke about war, and it looks like Trump will take the world to war in 2020 is what I said a couple of times last year, and in fact in the January predictions. And it looked like that was happening. I spoke about Trump doing all that saber rattling, and there he was in January of this year, when the leader of the Iranian army was assassinated, and it looked like things would escalate from that. Unfortunately, they didn't. But of course, there was that bigger picture that astrologers always worried about. Well, kind of now what? What's going to happen? Because it does look like this is the year of world war. Ironically, Trump, in a rare moment of lucidity this week, did actually say, we are fighting a world war against an invisible enemy. He said the world is fighting a war against an invisible enemy. So the context of the world war is there. It is true. All countries in the world are fighting this war against an invisible enemy. I mean, ironically, in my January predictions in the YouTube summary, I said all the countries of the world, all the governments of the world will be facing a crisis. But of course, I could never have imagined the scale of that crisis. Astrology is not a psychic art. We have to take factual information about planetary cycles and see what can we figure out that means. So what was it that shows this terrible time that we live in? Well, there's a cycle of what we think of as the difficult planets Saturn and Pluto that comes together every 35, 39 years. It varies a little from time to time because the cycles of the planets have variable lengths because of the shape of their orbits, but pretty much every 30-something years the cycle comes around. Whenever these great big planetary cycles come around, they represent a time that will provoke massive social change. And unfortunately, like any other change, massive social change happens under difficult circumstances. It would be phenomenally rare for a government or for the United Nations, whatever it may be, to introduce a whole bunch of easy, fantastic ways to improve the planet or improve our lives, because clearly human beings are not like that. In a strange kind of way, like everything else on the planet, we're kind of fighting for our own space, and we humans seem to have gone a little bit out of control, and in many ways, we have damaged and attacked the planet in order to fulfill our needs. And so what these cycles that come around every 30 to 40 years represent are ways that things are brought either back into balance or where big changes are forcibly made in order for growth to happen. The last time these cycles were around was 1983. That was the year that HIV/AIDS virus was identified. You'd think with that information, we'd know that maybe it was about this time, but on both previous occasions it was associated with the World War. In the early part of the 20th century, the configuration appeared just about the start of the First World War, the war that would change history and kill more people than any other war in history, and would completely change the face of Europe and everything that follows. The whole way that the structure of society worked changed with the First World War. And the second time it came around was in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War, which had seen the bombing of Hiroshima and the arrival of the nuclear age, the age of uncertainty and again of complete change of what the world would be about, both technologically and philosophically. So here we stand now at a time when human beings have brought the world to unprecedented crisis of climate and of the onslaught against the planet and nature that we have perpetuated. And so nature corrects things in a natural cycle in a very harsh fashion. You know, when things need to grow, like when you want to grow plants in your garden, the best way to do that is by harsh pruning. Sometimes pruning to remove damage, sometimes pruning to get the plant back to its proper potential, but in all cases, pruning to provoke the growth that is otherwise difficult to achieve and tends to fizzle out on its own. So nature does the same, and harsh big changes like this can happen. In fact, epidemiologists nowadays are theorizing that it's always the onslaught against nature that produces a viral epidemic. Certainly this one, HIV/AIDS, which, well, all these great viruses, they say, cross from animals to humans, and as a result of our damage to the environment and damage to animals in the environment. And they say this is the same. This is a virus that has come from animals and effectively ends up correcting the balance, or attempting to correct the balance in the world. I mean, it is true that we're reading reports of the pollution is clearing up dramatically in China, that the canals in Venice are running clear for the first time in living memory, that dolphins and turtles and other species have returned to those canals and to European waters in unprecedented ways. And so we can certainly see that with the slightest chance of nature correcting her balance, it starts correcting itself, and that we human beings are potentially expendable in the process because we are part of this great big planet Earth, and Earth will keep on correcting itself. So this is one of those correcting cycles, and which will provoke massive social, political and economic change. That is for sure, and we can already see that. One of the other things I spoke about in the predictions of the month ahead were the economic shock to the country that we would see in the second and third quarters. And of course, now we know that's way more than a Moody's downgrade, which perhaps wouldn't have been so shocking as we were expecting it. But it's the shock to the system by the dramatic effect on our economy and the world economies because of the effects of the virus and the steps that we need to take in order to do something about it. So where does it all go? Well, when we look at this cycle, here you can see a diagram representing the movements of those planets, and you can see it all coming together at the beginning of the year, triggered very strongly by the planet of war, Mars, that red line over there, and you can see that more or less extending over the course of 2020, which is why astrologers have always been seeing it as the bad news year that could have ramifications that last for many years. So it seems as if the period that we're in now has some shift in the early weeks of April, probably in the first week of April. There is some shift, and that might be some kind of stabilization of where we're at and what are we doing and what needs to be done. Because it does seem a slight improvement, at least the intensity tones down, although nevertheless the phase that we're in does seem to last all the way until June. And it might be that the steps that we're taking now are necessary until June, and that in June we can see more of the flattening of the curve or some kind of sense that things are under control. The third quarter does look better, but it's still true that in the September through November period, the cycles are still very much present. And realistically, we're still going to see a lot of dealing with it at that time. Worst case, some resurgence at that time, but more likely, those are the months when things finally start coming under control. And by late November or end of the year, the situation is much better managed. Many astrologers point out that there's some resonances related to these cycles and planets associated with viruses that continue on and off for a couple of years, and that may very well be true. But to all intents and purposes, COVID-19, as we know it and as we see it in these cycles, is the story of 2020, and that at least till the middle of the year, we've all got to do what we can to make a difference, and we can make a difference. Each of us doing our best to isolate, to keep a social distance, to do the only thing we can do against a virus, and that is to help as best as possible prevent its transmission so that health services are not overloaded all at one time. So we all can do something. We can not only help stop the spread of the virus, but in a strange way participate in the planet trying to correct itself by limiting the activity of human beings for a while. So we can do things that help the planet, and we can do things that help ourselves as well. We can use this opportunity to relook at our own lives and focus on things in our own lives and see what we can do to bring things back in balance for ourselves. And perhaps when all the people in the world start living in a little bit more of a balanced fashion, perhaps learning from this very difficult time, we'll all be able to enjoy a much better balanced world, or leave that for our children. So what can we individually do to make the most of this growth period for ourselves? Aries, hopefully finding yourself unable to act out there in the world because you're at home doing your best to hunker down. Well, this is a month for strategy for you. What a great thing to be doing in order to spend this time constructively. Beginning to focus on how to get your goals done, because after all of this is over, you're going to be able to charge into the world with a whole bunch of new ones. So this is the time to strategize. Setting goals is not something you do easily. You tend to run at things and jump at things, and often it becomes hit and miss. So this is a great opportunity for you to change your overall strategy in your life by focusing on your strategies right now and your strategies at this time in your life. Take the time spent alone to create a strategy for some important new goals that are finally going to be able to have you put your own goals forward rather than everyone else's. Strategize, Aries. Taurus, your horoscope is all about handling the community around you. And although we're keeping our distance and we're keeping isolated, there's still a lot that you can do with this focus on immediate community. There could be old people in your block of flats or other people in your block of flats who might need information or help. And there are all sorts of ways you can do that without having to get too intimate and close with everyone. Your WhatsApp group, your Facebook group, all sorts of ways that you can help organize your community. Perhaps if your block of flats hasn't got one, now's the time. Late at night, slip a note under everyone's door and say, join this WhatsApp group, or something like that, that really helps you work together and create a sense of community. Your horoscope, Taurus, is saying you can do something for the people around you. Be creative. Think of how to do that in this time of increased isolation. You can make a difference. Gemini, nothing personal, but of course you're the one least likely to be happy staying at home when all of this kind of thing is going down, because you're all about all the exciting things to do. Well, Gemini, there is a strong focus in your chart that says focus on domestic things. It's not me saying that just because you're a Gemini. And spend time alone, something that most Geminis find very difficult to do. But this could be a really great time to find your sense of roots and stability again, because Gemini, that is the challenge for you, to look back and realize how much you might have rattled your own life in recent times, have too many things on the go, too many people on the go, or anything like that, and realize that not by just because it's enforced isolation, as it were, but also for you, it's an opportunity to kind of clean the slate and create new, more solid roots for yourself. Cancerians, of course, home and family are the most important thing, and I'm sure you were out shopping earlier in the week and make sure that everything is taken care of, everyone's provided for however long this may last. I'm sure you're ready for that. But of course, as you know, you can't really have lots of people in your environment. Still, your charts show that your loved ones and your family are looking to you for guidance. And the guidance you can make for them right now is about setting fresh ideals and ideas. It's a time to learn how to do many things differently, and for you to break out of your old patterns. Your family looks at you and expects you to be the one who provides through difficult times like this, and you will. But it's also time to shift some of that perception, create new ideals. Your task, Cancer, is set up new ideals in your life. Realize that the younger ones in the family are looking up at you to see what's going on, or others in the family are looking up at you. Create your own ideals, set an example, be ready for that. Leos, this is a time to knuckle down and amp up the work. That's what you need to do, and you're ready to do. In fact, it's the perfect opportunity for you to do all the hard work that you need to do. That can include all the hard work of every kind, even the stuff around the house that needs to be done. It looks like you've got a lot of energy to spend. That could be challenging at a time like this, but most importantly, it's energy you can put into hard work that needs to be done. So working on your own, not being disturbed by other people, focusing on your own stuff, it's the perfect opportunity for that. But while you're about it, you need to grab that toolbox and identify all the work that needs to be done around the house, because this is the opportunity to spend that energy in a constructive way. So never mind everyone else, do your thing. This is the time to get all that stuff done. Virgos, for you, this is a time of quiet reflection, as many of us are doing at this time, but the particular focus in your chart, Virgo, is on your relationships, and all the relationships, from the general and the friends and acquaintances to the most important one-to-one relationships in your life. Your chart is showing this is really a time to consider how much you might have limited or restricted your relationships through your own expectations or through too many specific expectations of the other. It's time to reflect on relationships in general and see how you can make them work better in your life, because you might have experienced some loss or disappointment of friends in recent times. So resetting your beliefs and expectations about your relationships and starting afresh once we're all back into that social world out there. Perfect opportunity to clean up the old social ways and get ready for some new ones. Also, some reflection for Librans this month as you begin to realize how much you kind of depend on other people, either for resources or for input or for validation or for the opportunity for you to do something for them. And with this time of restricted access, restricted connection to other people, it's an opportunity for you to learn Firstly, how much you do depend on all of that, but also how to reset and bring it back to yourself. Bring it back to yourself and realizing you have the resources you need, you're capable of generating your own resources, you're capable of bringing as much peace and harmony into your own life as you're always so willing and able to do for others. So bringing it back home, now that you're stuck inside the home, this is a great opportunity for you to rediscover your own worth and your own ability to do it yourself. You know, Scorpio, many people have told us that this time of isolation is the opportunity to learn new things. And for you this month, you're the extra special candidate for that. I mean, we can all do online learning of any kind at any time. YouTube and Coursera and Udemy, full of ways to learn all sorts of new things. But for you, actually, professional skills can be learned. This is a great time to catch up on some skills that you need that might be able to take you much further in the world and in the pursuit of your own profession. It might also be a time to kind of reset a lot of what professional stuff is about and begin to see how you can create different goals and different ways of getting there. All of that is going to require input. You've actually got a busy time spent all alone pursuing and absorbing all that new knowledge. So, a great time ahead for you, Scorpio. Sagittarians, your professional life might have been a bit challenging in recent times with some disappointments and things not working out quite the way that you thought that they would. So this is what you need to work at resetting and refocusing at this time. The charts imply that you spent a lot of energy right at the beginning and then things fizzle out or just don't produce the goods. So a little bit of re-strategizing is also necessary for you, and to reflect on how your own energy and enthusiasm is sometimes what you're tripping over. Don't lose the energy and the enthusiasm. It just needs to be focused in a more constructive way. It's about the usual doing fewer things and setting clearer goals and a strategy of how to get there rather than doing it all in the beginning. So that's what you think about at this time, and think about how can I do my goals in such a way that I space out and stage them, and maybe just do one of them at a time. Too much on the plate always leads to fizzling out. Think about that. Capricorns should find isolation or distancing not very difficult at all, especially because the chart looks like it's the people around you that have become a little bit too much in some way. There could be friendships that you're still playing through the motions and are not really serving your life, or other kinds of relationships that perhaps are doing more to get in the way than to really advance you. So this time spent alone and in isolation is an opportunity to discover who really is your support system and who really isn't. Who can you reach out to and who doesn't actually support your needs. And basically who's not on the same page as you. So for you Capricorns, this is a bit of a social reset and moving on from those people who no longer stand on the same page or on the same team as you do, getting back to discovering who your real friends really are. Aquarian self-reflection this month might be a little harder because you really have to be honest with yourself about to what extent you sometimes are the author of your own problems. It does look like stuff that you've avoided and ignored might be coming back to haunt your thoughts at this time. Don't be scared of that. Don't run away. Now's the time, in the quiet space of your own, in the quiet space of self-isolation, to reflect on how sometimes you've really been your own worst enemy in many ways and sabotaged your own progress. This then is also a time to reorient your ideas and your ideals, like some others in the zodiac this month, and create new ways of getting to the goals that you want. And one of the ways to do that is by looking at the people around you and realizing who really is your support system and who isn't. It's really a time to reorient your social group, reorient your ideals, acknowledge the mistakes that you've made so far, and go forward with new ideas and new people on your side. You know, Pisces, the ability to spend time alone is of course nothing at all new to you. You do that very easily. You can escape into your own world, and maybe that's one of the things to do. You know, this is one of those times when really it's okay to focus on me, to focus on other stuff other than all that important stuff about goals and missions out in the world and all of that. Playtime and creative time and self-time is really the perfect time now for you to get involved in all of that, to focus again on your own creativity and what it can and has brought into your life. Creative projects or other projects that have been on the go, just getting back in touch almost with the childlike version of yourself that's untroubled by all the stuff in the world. But the purpose of that is, of course, just that little reset that helps you realize my creative self, this level of my social life, when all of this is over, I'm going to take that back into the world and set some new creative goals. Well, we can't underplay the fact that it's a very challenging and sometimes frightening time that we face, but once we understand that every now and then the earth resets itself and society resets ourselves, then hopefully we'll take the opportunity to do the same for ourselves. Best wishes in this time, everyone. I will see you again next week.